Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LFC Transfer Room live stream with myself, Anthony, Mihai, and Carter. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Before we get into everything, a little bit of housekeeping. Please make sure to leave a like and subscribe on this video if you haven't already. If you do subscribe, you're going to help us get to 10k, and that's what we're aiming for, hopefully before the next transfer window. We're about 250 people away from that at the moment, so everybody get hitting that subscribe button. If you've done that and you've liked the video already, make sure you have the notification bell on for all future streams, and make sure that you share this with a friend as well. It's free, doesn't charge you anything, and sure, look, if they don't like it, they don't like it. At least we get the views. That's the way I look at it. So welcome everybody. Welcome Mihai, welcome Carter, welcome Anthony. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Little bit of a quiet day in regards to news, but we'll go over the game yesterday and we'll go over a couple of other bits of news that I found today, thankfully. So I'll pass it over to my panel mates. We'll see how everybody's doing. Carter, first time on with myself, and I think first time on the stream. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm excited to do this. I thought about when you put the message out to do this for a while, so it's exciting. Obviously, you said slow news day, so not too much pressure, which is all right. But yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Good. Yeah, a little bit of a slow news day. It's not always like this, I promise. When it gets into transfer window time, we do get a bit nuts, especially coming up to the deadline days. But Mihai, myself and yourself have been on a good few times already, and we know what it's like when it gets very, very busy. How are you today, my friend?
I'm trying to be optimistic about the weekend that's coming, because as we've discussed, I've captained Saka in my FPL team, so I've went against the Egyptian king. If it works, I'll leave it there.
If it works. Yeah, I think I've captained Salah myself purely because Forest have let in 27 down their right hand, their left hand side, which is Salah's side, and they've let in 24 down the middle, which is Nunez. So I think both Salah and Nunez are a walk and goal and an assist in FPL. But yeah, it's tough at the top, in the LFC transfer room. FPL competition. I'm not saying that because I'm currently at the top, but we won't get into that. Anthony, how are you, my friend?
Can you hear me properly?
Yes, we can.
I'm doing good. Good win yesterday. I think there's good vibes from this season, and unlike you, Mihai, I have Captain Marcelo, so you can hold that, my friend. But how are you doing, Stephen?
That's good. It's just it's either way, I think it's going to work out for you, Mihai. Either you're going to captain, because Sheffield let in an awful lot of their goals down the same side that Saka is, so that could work out in your favor. But either way, I think there's at least a goal and an assist in all three of them. So I don't think it's that much of a risk on your side. I think it's more just it's a little bit sacrilegious. But I suppose we wouldn't get that from an Arsenal fan, would we? But Carter, to bring you up to speed, we done predictions earlier on at the start of the season, and Mihai put down, I think it was Arsenal to do very, very well and probably win the league. So he's now been labelled as the closet Arsenal fan in the group. Has yet to live that down, but getting into some of the news topics. Koeman has a bit of a grudge against Ryan Gravenberch. It's quoted as saying that we hold a certain opinion about players that opt out. Now, that's a bit rich coming from the same man that left the Netherlands high and dry to go and try and coach Barcelona, but he doesn't seem to be a man of many principles, does he? Anthony, Ryan Gravenberch's been left out again for the international side for the upcoming November internationals after being left out following his very quick deadline day move in August. He was left out in October, now he's been left out in November. All down to the fact that the young kid just wanted the 21-year-old kid who had to up and move his life in the space of 48 hours just wanted to settle in to the city that he just moved to. And Koeman just seems to be holding a grudge at this rate. Give me a couple of your thoughts on it, and if any of this grudge is founded at all.
Yeah, maybe I'm in a minority here. I don't really care. If anything, I think it's a positive because he's a Liverpool player. He doesn't have to pick up an injury on international break, and it's just a point. Netherlands are basically through anyway in their group, I'm pretty sure. So who cares? But he's a good player anyway. He's had a really good start for us, especially yesterday. It was just
it's beautiful.
Fun. He's gravy, man. He's so sick at the moment, and he's a bargain. I think was it 35 mil we picked him up for? I think
34 million pounds.
Bargain, man. He's gonna be one of the signings of the summer, hopefully.
I think so too. And to be honest with you, it kind of goes to show how a manager can be very influential on how a player plays, along with the play style in which they're doing it. It didn't really help with Bayern that he was playing in a 4-2-3-1 system under Tuchel. And even Nagelsmann prior to that as well wasn't really utilised. Mihai, in relation to Gravenberch, like we seem to have gotten Ajax Gravenberch rather than Bayern Gravenberch. But that's to be expected when a box-to-box midfielder is being asked to play either a defensive role or an attacking role and not be used to his strengths. But thankfully, Klopp seems to be using him to his strengths.
Yeah, I mean, before, I remember we've discussed Gravenberch in preseason when we were doing the shows, and basically I was a bit skeptical about him, mainly because I was thinking about his wage and then where does he fit in, because at that moment we were all discussing DMs, but it's been working a lot better than I thought it would work, and that's not only with him but also with our entire squad basically. So he's doing great. And again, it's odd to see a national side manager pick up have a grudge against 21-year-old someone. It's just weird, because then you have to think about man management and that sort of stuff. Like, what message does this send to the rest of the squad basically? And you have players like a certain Virgil van Dijk, a certain Cody Gakpo who's playing there as well. So, I don't know what's kind of the atmosphere that creates now inside of the dressing room, especially with the way Gravenberch has been playing. So,
yeah,
I don't know. It's odd. But again, as Anthony said, I think it's on the physically, it's better for Gravenberch, but maybe he's not doing so well, mentally emotionally rather thinking about this whole scenario. So yeah,
I think he's okay mentally. I think he seems to be really enjoying his football. He just looks like a guy that's enjoying his work, just from the way he's playing, the way he's performing. And to your point about Gakpo is actually left out of this international squad as well, funnily enough. Cody Gakpo isn't in it, and Ryan Gravenberch aren't in it. Only Virgil van Dijk, I think, from Liverpool has been the only. And now it is a provisional squad. We do need to preface that it's provisional, meaning it can change. But I think Koeman just has a bit of a fucking grudge for Ryan Gravenberch because he snubbed him. Carter, with the likes of international breaks, we've seen it already with Robbo going down with his injury. To Anthony's point, it seems like it's a bit of a blessing in disguise. Similarly to how Alisson isn't really getting minutes with Brazil. That suits us fine. We know Alisson is a fantastic player. We know Ryan Gravenberch is a fantastic player. If the national managers don't want to utilise them and put them in their national squads and just give them a week off, who are we to complain?
I know what you mean. I think for Alisson, it makes perfect sense. He's older. He's got experience. But I think for Gravenberch, the fact that the Euros are coming up in the summer, it would be a really good experience for him to go play significant minutes, build up sort of real under pressure minutes, which he probably hasn't had to do at Ajax because he came into the team just after the big Champions League run, and he hasn't been able to do that at Bayern. So I think that would be good to see him in like a proper game. Like, imagine we saw him in the Argentina-Holland game in the World Cup. Like, it would be good to test him, whereas Alisson, it's not that big an issue. But I do think it's just a positive for us, to be honest, because he can come back. He should, if he doesn't go, he should start the next game. Like, if he's not gone and played and he hasn't travelled, like McAllister will go to South America, Endo, I'm not sure where Japan are playing. So he should just be able to come straight back in, which is only a positive for us.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. He should slot straight back in there on a week's rest. Something that you mentioned about the Euros, though, and something to Hiller's comment here is that old school managers can't stand not being blindly respected without question, whatever the excuse. Koeman seems to be that kind of a manager, and I don't know if I don't think he'll be there when the Euros roll around next summer. I think he could be let go prior to that, purely as Mihai mentioned on the man management side of things. Carter, do you think maybe Ryan Gravenberch is just maybe biding his time, knowing that the manager is going to change? And like, he's 21, he's got another 10, 15 years of playing left in him.
Definitely. He's probably thinking, obviously he'd really like to play because Holland missed out on one of the previous tournaments and you only do have so many as a player. but he probably knows, apart from England and France, how many of the teams have changed managers. Martinez has done what Belgium, now Portugal, like they're all moving across, and he'll know he just has to wait his time. It's almost like what Sancho's doing a bit. Sometimes you just have to wait, and then a new manager will come in and they'll fancy you.
Yeah, that seems exactly. I think Sancho is doing the exact same thing, but obviously on a club level. It's interesting because I do think that Gravenberch is probably just going to wait this coach out, and if he ends up getting a couple of weeks off throughout the year, and it helps his club level and helps his club profile increase, well then the next manager that comes in is only going to see that body of work that he's been able to do under, as we should say, less pressure from not having these international games or having to use his fitness on these international games. I think it'll stand to him and it'll benefit him. But moving on from Ryan Gravenberch and Koeman and their grudge match, just before we move on to the next topic, I want to make sure to ask everybody to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to hit 10K hopefully by the next transfer window. If you have done those already, thank you so much. It really helps out the channel. And if you have if you have done them, just hit the bell notification so you get notified about all future streams. We're on from 7:30 every day UK time, and we have our post-match streams as well. We'll be having one this Sunday after the Nottingham Forest game, and we'll be back again tomorrow for a match preview at 7:30 tomorrow evening too. So hopefully you can join us then. Moving on then to our next topic, Marc Guehi, forgive me if I'm pronouncing that name absolutely horrifically. I'm sure somebody will correct me on that. But the 23-year-old centre-back that's currently captaining Palace tonight in the next 15 minutes against Spurs as we speak is somebody that has major interest from Liverpool and amongst other clubs who are monitoring it. He's the kind of player that can play both either side of the centre-back role, so he can play left and he can play, which is something that's very needed for us, and he can also play on the right, so he could cover and move over for the likes of Trent and stuff like that when he goes into his double pivot role. Anthony, Marc Guehi, English 23-year-old, kind of solves the homegrown issue that we had as a bit of a headache at the end of the transfer window. Do you rate him? Do you think he'd be a good fit as a young centre-back to come into that team?
I think it'll be good, to be fair. It's obviously always impossible to predict, to be fair, when players come from mid-table sides and you kind of throw them right into the deep end. But is that good signs? I'll say whenever I've seen him play, even for England, I think he's looked quite decent. The only concern is if he's at that quality. I think we need like ready-made players. I've not watched too much of him, so I can't really have that opinion. But someone to arguably replace Robertson, a centre-back playing in left-back. And then you've got other kind of issues as well. I think we've got 4 centre-backs now who can play at a top level. Kwanzaa, he's going to be wanting to come up, so he'll have limited game time. Maybe send him out on loan. But you got 5 players who are kind of competing for that first spot. Obviously not Kwanzaa, but like he'll want to get to that point. So it's an interesting one. I can't realistically see us signing him, but it'll be nice. I'm not saying no to a young, talented centre-back.
Yeah, I think considering it's coming from Palace and he'd also solve the homegrown issue, I think it's something that we should very much realistically be looking at. Carter, as Mark as a player, he's played for England 7 times so far. He's currently a right-footed centre-back, but he's played both sides of the back line. And he came from Chelsea last season, just going to Crystal Palace, and he's captaining them currently. I think it's going to be a very good fit if he is in there. Have you watched much of him yourself? I've watched a little bit of him. He seems solid. He seems like somebody that could come in and properly do numbers. Similar to how Gravenberch looked. He looked great with Chelsea, then left, and is now back and now playing for Palace. Could we see another situation like Gravenberch where the manager can uplift a player more? And give me a couple of your thoughts on him as a player yourself if you've watched him.
So sort of the first time I watched him was the second game. I think it was it was either the quarterfinal of the playoffs or the semi-final of the playoffs when he was at Swansea. Because obviously Brewster was out on loan sort of when he went from January, and he sort of played, I think Guehi was there, unless I'm mistaken. I think he was at Swansea. And I think he got back-to-back sort of man of the matches. And in the game...
He was on loan from Chelsea back in 2020.
He was very impressive in that sort of either quarterfinal or semi-final. And that's when I first thought, oh, and then obviously you hear at the end of the game, on loan from Chelsea. So obviously we've got no chance. And then I've seen him play a few games. I always remember sort of the Arsenal games, one where he scored no goal, but he still has played well. And I think a big thing for us is availability. Like you look at Matip, Gomez, Konate, all not regularly available. I don't know how many injuries Guehi's picked up, but I know it's not a lot because I think I looked at 92 games in maybe 2 or 3 seasons, which is a lot. And that would easily be enough for us from him. And obviously, as you say, homegrown quota. If Matip left and he came in, that's one positive. Also, it's just the fact that he may not even play that many games for England as well, which means there's less risk of him getting injured if there's Tomori, Stones, just those type of players. So in that sense, it's a positive for us because if you look at the last few years, like Mane, 90 minutes, Salah, 90 minutes for Egypt. And it probably wouldn't be a terrible thing for us to have some guys who have a week or two off.
Yeah, I literally, as you were talking there and I was listening to you, I looked it up. The only injury he's had that's been reported on his career is a groin injury in 2021 in March, where he missed 10 days and 3 games for Swansea. Outside of that, availability seems to be his best ability. So I can't complain with that at all. He seems to be a great young player that could come in. And the fact that I see his birthday as 2000 is shocking, considering my own age being in the 90s. But it's upsetting. I'm getting old. Mihai, I think we're both past it as regards to professional footballer days. I think our dreams of being a professional footballer are long gone at this stage. But Marc Guehi is as a player, he's a young, talented centre back that solves our homegrown issue. Fair enough, he's right-footed, as Halier mentions here. But Robert also mentions that he has I'm not sure if that comment showing up. It is. There it is. I'm a bit slow at the moment on this. He also has an awful lot of maturity as well for such a young player. He's captaining a Premier League side at the age of 23 as a centre-back, which is genuinely very much unheard of, especially a decent Premier League side like Palace. Like let's not beat around the bush here. There's very good players in that Palace squad that could be captains, but this young English 23-year-old seems to be leading the charge for them. Again, it could just be another leader we add into it. So hopefully, I think we should go for him. Give me a couple of your thoughts on him as a player, and if it's a viable option for us to go for him. I think he's quoted at somewhere around the 35-40 million euro mark, not even pounds.
I think when we first discussed him, I think we've talked about him briefly in the summer. I was thinking since then, the one thing that I have like 2 concerns I have with him, which are, not necessarily that big of a deal anyways. First of all, the fact that, like Anthony said, he's coming from a lower, what's the word? Side of the table. Sorry. It's late. It's late in Romania. It's even, 2 hours.
Lower tier side.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. So when you play for a team like Palace, and then even playing for England, I feel like you play a certain type of football. You usually stay back a lot more. Palace are not a team that necessarily play a high line or anything like that. So maybe that's kind of a thing. But when you think about Liverpool's stuff in terms of identifying the right type of player for the football that we play, then I don't really feel like that's a valid concern anyways, because they know better than I do. So if we actually sign him, then I'm pretty sure that's not going to be a major concern. But the issue, like maybe the number one reason why I don't think we can sign him, is the price tag. Now, he is English, so I am unsure of what exactly the sum that Palace is asking is going to be.
Oh, they'll ask 60 million for him easily.
Yeah. Do you think they will?
Yeah. He's valued on transfer market at the moment is 35 million euro, but there's been Czech Ducoria was averaged at that as well, about 40 million euro, and they wanted 80. Mm-hmm. Now add in the English tax for selling between 2 Premier League clubs also, they'll ask for 60 million from. It'll be similar to, now I think if they ask for 60 million, I think he may be worth it. to be perfectly honest with you, especially in this market, because yesterday's price is not today's price. But I do genuinely think he will be worth that investment, because he could be a Premier League centre back for the next 10 years. And thankfully, with Kwanzaa, as Anthony mentioned, I think Kwanzaa alone has saved us 50 to 60 million pounds, purely from his emergence as a possible first team player. I know, Anthony, you said he might not get game time, and you'd like to see him loaned out to get some first team game time to develop properly. I think as it stands at the moment, Van Dijk's going to be gone in 2 or 3 years. Kwanzaa's only 20. Konate has injury concerns. Matip is getting up there in age. Gomez isn't a shoe-in always to start. Kwanzaa could get some serious game time over the next 2 years rather than going out on loan, and he'd be getting game time in top games. He could even get game time in Champions League next season in some of the group stage games. I can very much see that happening if his trajectory continues the same way. So for about the £60 million mark, I don't think Marc Guehi would be the worst. However, if we're willing to spend £60 million, I'd rather us just go and get Gonzalo Inacio. But then you have the homegrown problem. That's the issue. So Marc Guehi kind of solves both of those problems in the one go. And it's interesting because Liverpool actually changed their scouting strategy for their youngsters after Brexit, because following Brexit, the European Union brought in that you couldn't sign, any country outside of Europe couldn't sign somebody that was under the age of 18, something along those lines, that wasn't from Europe. So the likes of Stefan Bajcetic, we wouldn't have been able to sign him if we were looking at him now, which is why we focused an awful lot on the likes of Coen Doherty from Ireland, and Trainee Oni as well, who's also English, and training with the first team as well, which is nuts. But that is a topic for another day, and I have talked enough at this moment in time. We'll move on to the next topic that we have here. And before we do that, another bit of housekeeping again, just to make sure that you do hit the like and subscribe button. Help us hit that 10K mark. Make sure you have the bell notification on for all of our future streams and all of our future videos. We'll have our predicted 11 versus Nottingham Forest ready to go for the weekend. That should be up hopefully tomorrow. We also have 3 things that need to change, which has been done by our other host Matty. That'll be up tomorrow as well, hopefully. So hopefully you have your bell notification on, and we'll get that you get some views on them as well. It'll help us an awful lot. Hellier has a question here, and I'm going to throw it to everyone in the group, because it is a very interesting question considering Endo's performance against Toulouse. Now, I know it was Toulouse, but they still scored on us, and they're a resurging French side who is doing very well at the moment. Hellier asked the question, if Endo suddenly turns into a beast in midfield, which I think he can do in the likes of the Carabao Cup, the FA Cup, and the Europa League games, and claims that number 6 position, or we buy someone in January, where does that leave Alexis McAllister? And I think his point is more so towards the emergence of Ryan Gravenberch. I'll give my 2 cents on it very quickly, and then I'll pass it over to you guys. I think iron sharpens iron, and it will only make both Ryan Gravenberch and Alexis McAllister better. I think that they can rotate and interrotate. Having gone from having 2 OAPs and Henderson and Milner, and Jones, who had injury issues, and Harvey Elliott, who had an injury issue when he was a while ago as well, and having an absolutely abysmal midfield, to now having players that are world-class fighting for the spots, I think it's a fantastic problem. Anthony, how do you feel about that problem? Are you happy that you have 4 to 5 world-class midfielders that are fighting for the starting 3 positions?
I wouldn't quite throw a world-class bracket on them just yet, but I agree with your point. Jordan Henderson, if you've been following the channel for 3 years, you know I wouldn't even say it's an agenda. He's just a bad player. Simple as that. So to be gone from all that, I think we need that depth, man, in quality. City have had it for ages. I've had Bernardo, Gundogan, Rodri, De Bruyne, who else? Foden, they could put in midfield. I'm sure a couple more. You always need that depth if you want to compete for the top trophies, and we've had that in previous seasons. So there's no reason why we can't have that today. I think we'll be very silly, to be honest, if we went into the season with just Gravenberch and Szoboszlai as our starting midfielders, and the drop-off is, let's say, Harvey Elliott. No disrespect to him, but in terms of quality, he's obviously not on the level of those 2. So I think, like you said, man, it'll just kind of improve them. They'll be fighting to start for that starting midfield spot. And Plus, we've got so many fixtures anyway, Champions League games. So I think they'll rotate. It's not a case of who's on the bench, because you're going to rotate every match anyway. So
yeah,
I've got no problem with McAllister. I think he's a great player. And at the moment, obviously, he's probably not in our best 11, but he has been playing DM and out of position, so it's not really fair on him. But Endo, maybe he does become a beast. Who knows? Maybe we've signed an absolute gem, a 30-year-old gem for 18 million, but I can't see it. I think McAllister will start for us regularly in DM this season.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Endo is more our stopgap for the likes of the Cup games and the Europa League games. I've no problem with him in them games at all. I would worry about him in the likes of a game against City. I'd rather McAllister in there, even though he's out of position. And again, that's not a knock on Endo. But to your point, I'll ask Mihai the same question. The depth was always an issue for us for a little while. Now it seems to be solved. Do you think it's very much similar to what Anthony mentioned, in that it's a rotationary midfield, that we have 3 positionless players and then we go and sign hopefully a specialist 6 and allow them then to all rotate then that way? I think that'll be the best option going forward.
Yeah, I agree, and I was thinking when you were talking about the rotation and the number of options that we now have in midfield, I was thinking about the time frame from 2018 to 2022, when we kept on saying that we don't have the depth, we cannot compete on 4 fronts. Now it happened in 2022, but look what that did to us for the next season. I feel like now it is such a good headache to have, to not know who to play. You have McAllister, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, Elliott, Jones, so many players that can play there, and they're all good. Like if Endo, if any one of them plays, like I would see, even if you go into, I don't know, a Premier League match and you play Elliott, Endo, and Jones, I'd be like, okay, sketchy, but I'm okay with it. This is what we've been wanting, or at least me personally, I've been wanting for quite some time now. So yeah, I think it's great to have that headache. I think Jurgen loves it as well, after having so many seasons where you basically knew his 11. Everyone knew it. So yeah, I'm just excited to see what happens this season, because I've been pretty worried in preseason, and I've been saying that I think playing Europa League is a bit of a blessing in disguise now, because we have so many players that can grow this season, and they need the confidence. Like even Darwin Nunez, who's maybe, okay, he's not necessarily what's the word, like maybe he's not as young. You can say he has experience in the Champions League with Benfica as well, playing there, so at top level, but still he had he got so much hate in online, and with him having the option to maybe now play some sides who are not Champions League level, get some goals in. Hopefully next time when he has an open goal.
That was just a generous assist. Like that was just pure.
It was like a genius assist. Like you don't see that from De Bruyne, honestly.
You don't even see that from Haaland.
True. So yeah, I think it's just a great season. Like I feel.
No, it is. Honestly, it's nice.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm not now having all those worries in preseason. I'm just enjoying the ride, seeing the team grow, and maybe next season onwards you can finally challenge on all fronts.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think I was very much in agreement with you as well last time, that I thought that the getting into the Europa League and missing out on the Champions League was a blessing in disguise, because we can now play the likes of Kwanzaa, Chambers, Elliott starting, and the likes of Doak starting as well, and others too, and Stefan Bajcetic can start them games when he's back fit as well. It's games that allow our younger players to get serious first team minutes under their belt, and it allows them to develop at a much, much faster rate than they would have just with some Carabao Cup and some FA Cup games. Because if we were in our quad season again, none of them players would have gotten a look in, and that's a shame because of how good they are, which is clearly evident with the likes of Chambers, the likes of Kwanzaa, the likes of Doak, the likes of Bajcetic. There's serious players there. With the Carter, there's just a comment here that I wanted to bring up, and I'll let you address it as well, is that Vase of Flowers mentions here, and I'll get on to Steve J's one in a minute. It's nice to be having this conversation of who we should start in midfield, because it wasn't always like this options-wise. A bit like Mihai's comments earlier, just a little bit ago, in relation to how we always knew who was going to be in midfield, and we always knew, it was like, this is where the pain begins, when you see two lads that don't have legs anymore trying to show that they have legs. And Steve mentions this point here, that if we're close to the top of the league by the January window and we get a 6, we win the league. I see Anthony's obviously agreeing with that as well. I do agree with it. Do you think if we get a solidified 6, such as Andre, in January, even though other clubs are currently very much interested in him now, do you think that may push us over the edge, considering how close it is at the moment?
I think it might. But also at the same time, I think when you look at sort of the profile of a lot of players, I think McAllister and Thiago are quite, not in exactly the same way, but in terms of stature and mobility, are quite similar to Andre. And I do kind of think we should maybe look to sign like slightly a different profile. Like maybe not Palhinha because he is older, but I do think also someone like Andre may take away from Trent, sort of in that sort of, if we played a 3-2 sort of in possession and they're both sat there, not everyone can try the 60-yard pass every single time they get the ball. Yeah. Sometimes you do just have to stand there. Like, that's why I really like Curtis Jones, because although he might not, some people think he has an issue with maybe holding onto the ball too long. I think you do need players that do that sometimes, because he does just slow us down. We keep the ball, we keep the opposition penned in, and we pass it and pass it and pass it till we get a better option. Sometimes you don't need to just hoof the ball in or stuff like that. Sometimes you can just recycle possession, because apart from City, I'd say we have a much better attack and probably attacking midfielder than every team in the league. Like, I'd still say Diaz, Nunez, Salah, Szoboszlai, and then you probably throw in Trent as another attacking player. Apart from City, we've got a better attack than every other team, so we don't always need to rush things. And sometimes we can be a bit more, I hate to say it, like City, and sort of just kill the other team and just be relentless and pen them in. Because we have started to do that more, but I think that is sort of the end goal. If you look at how we're moving with the team, it's less of the, which I really did like, the less of the gun-ho, Robertson, Trent, get up as high as you can, Milner and Wijnaldum just run for England, basically. And it is a lot more now like pass, 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 good opportunity. Obviously, we're still going to have transitions. Like, you look at Nunez last night, he had that opportunity, and we still want to create those opportunities with our pressing. But I do think we probably should maybe look at a different profile than Andre.
Yeah, I think he'd be fine, but I would much rather somebody that's a little bit bigger in stature and more physical. Somebody 100%. That I'd done a bit of a profile on just as the window was ending was Florentino Luis from Benfica, who currently, as it stands at the moment, isn't really getting much game time at Benfica. He has a release clause of over 100 million, but I know at the time when I done that video, Benfica were happy to take about 50 million for him to let him go. So I think that should be somebody that's on our radar. It does, again, the homegrown issue is the only issue that we really have, and the fact that obviously England have now voted to be out of Brexit and everything like that kind of fucks everything up a little bit, considering the visas and everything and how difficult it is to get some foreign players over. But it is what it is. You got to deal with it. There's nothing that we can do. To move on now, before we go on to our next point, I just, again, a little bit of housekeeping. I know I keep repeating it, but if you can, please do leave a like and subscribe. We always do very much appreciate it. Make sure you hit the bell notification so that you can get notified of all future videos and all current streams. And if you have done that already, we love you very much, and thank you so much for that. Helior then asks a comment here that I want to bring up, and I'll ask everybody individually about this. I'll give my own piece on it first, and that we are maybe close to a team that we're really satisfied with. So I guess, have our expectations changed? I bet most Liverpool fans expect to win the European Cup, but what else? Funny that you mentioned that, because Dominic Szoboszlai was quoted as saying, we're going to win the lot. He quite literally was quoted as saying, we're going to win the Premier League, we're going to win the Europa League, we're going to win the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup. Fuck it, we might as well win the World Cup and the Euros too while we're at it. But I like that confidence in Dominic. I think, realistically, you have to aim for everything, Helior, to be honest with you. I think we're probably favourites to win the Europa League. I think we're in a shoe-in to win the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, along with every other top Premier League side. With regards then to the Premier League, it becomes a little bit more muddy. I think that we are in with a shout. We are in a title race, but it will all come down to what happens in January, in my own opinion. But you need to aim for the stars. That's the way I look at it. If you're not first, you're last, as Ricky Bobby says. That's essentially the be all and end all of it. And any professional that thinks otherwise shouldn't be with Liverpool. If we're aiming for second, I don't think that's what we should be aiming for. But I'll ask that question of yourself. I'll go back to yourself, Carter, since I got to you last time. Do you think we're satisfied with the team as it is at the moment? Do you think there's people that we should add to it more, like we need to add a good few more players to it? Or has possibly a lot of people's expectations following last season changed, considering we knew we'd need a rebuild and maybe some people lowered their expectations?
I think losing such like a core of players is going to be difficult no matter what. Like even if they haven't been playing well, losing Milner, Henderson, it is going to be a big loss. But I do think we have done a really good job, because I'm trying to think of windows where teams have signed 8 different players and it's worked out. It hasn't really ever worked out for anyone like that. Like you look at some of the big windows PSG had, didn't work out. Chelsea had Chilwell, Havertz, Werner, didn't work out. So I think we should be happy with the players we signed. But I do still think we are sort of top heavy in certain positions. Like I think if you look at Nunez, Gakpo and Jota, I think that they all should only really play for us up front. Like if I saw any of them starting on the wing, I'm a bit like, oof, I don't think that's your, but we don't really optimize you as a player there. So I do think someone like, obviously everyone here probably would like a Leao or a Kvaratskhelia or something like that. But I think someone like Neto, who can play both wings, who's a good dribbler, who's got some pace. Like imagine if Salah or Diaz go down, we're going to be very heavy on one wing for however long they're out. And obviously that doesn't really happen to Salah. But I do think we are slightly top heavy. Like if you think DM now, if McAllister gets injured, are we going to trust Jones there? Are we going to trust Endo there? I don't want to play Man City with either of those two as the 6.
Yeah, but you could say the same about that with every team, really. If City lose Haaland, they're shagged up front. We've already seen how weak they've become in midfield after losing De Bruyne. But I think it's something that every team kind of has to deal with and you have to run the risk with. I do agree with you 100%. I feel the Nunez, Gakpo and Jota in the middle of that 9 role. But I'd also say that it's kind of like the midfield. It's a good problem to have, because imagine if we didn't have Nunez and all we had to rely on with Jota, and then he got his suspension after Gakpo went down injured. But now we have Nunez, and Nunez has been banging goals in and assists left, right, and centre. And then Jota can also play on the left or on the right. Nunez can play on the right if Salah was to go down, because that's his preferred position really with Benfica. But I 100% agree with you. I feel we are top heavy, but I like being top heavy. Iron sharpens iron. I think it's a good problem to have. A problem nonetheless, though. So we'd need to get somebody, as you mentioned, Neto, that has the flexibility that can cover multiple positions. Similarly to why I mentioned Marc Guehi, because he can cover both centre-back positions. But I 100% agree with you. I think we're 2 to 3 injuries away, and especially in the CDM role. If McAllister was to get hurt, touch wood that he doesn't, do we really trust Endo? Do we really trust Jones or even Trent in there as a long-term option? But I think we will address that in the January window. I think we bring in some depth. I just have this feeling that Florentino Luis is going to go from Benfica, and I think he's going to go in January. And I hope to God we get him, because he's prime Fabinho at the age of 23. From my scouting of him, he's nuts. He's absolutely nuts. But we won't discuss him until we hit the January window. Anthony, similarly to Carter's point, being top heavy and you need to be top heavy to try and compete and win in Everton, because you need top talent across the board. So while it is a problem, and I agree with it, I think we're thin in other areas that we need reinforcement in, as we said, the 6. With how the roster is at the moment and how the squad is at the moment, where do you think the main problem areas are for having too many players and having too few players?
Too many players, I think Carter touched on, was the sort of central position up top. Where you got Jota, Nunez, Gakpo, and then even on left wing, I think you can argue you got 4 players who can play there in Nunez, Diaz, Jota, and Gakpo. But at the same time, I love having that sort of problem. Obviously, it's not a problem, but it's a nice. Well, it is a problem, but it's a nice problem. Because they're actually quality players. So I don't mind if any of them start. I don't mind if any of them don't start. It's got to be midfield. I think just the depth or not central midfield, in defensive midfield. We've got McAllister playing out of position. Gravenberch, who's Klopp said can play in DM. He's not a DM. Can play there. And then you got Endo, who, yes, he looked good yesterday, but there were still chances that Tilly's created. And there was so much of a gap between the defence and the midfield at certain times where I thought that's where your DM needs to be, and Fabinho usually was, but obviously he's no longer with us. And then I'm not sure. I think in terms of numbers, we're quite well stacked, I'd argue, but in terms of quality, like for left back, you can probably say Tsimikas hasn't been at that top level recently. Even with Robertson, I think you can argue he's had a drop off. So maybe in that area, but centre backs, like we've got 5 different centre backs who can play along those positions. Keepers were stacked, right back, Trent, Gomez. So I think in terms of numbers, we're doing quite well. But maybe in terms of quality for DM, we definitely need one. Like I agree with the earlier point. If we sign a top class DM or just any DM who's good enough to play for Liverpool, then we can win the league. Obviously, it's not guaranteed. Everyone knows that because we finished on 97 points, the second or third highest points in Premier League history, and didn't manage to win the bloody league. So anything can happen. But I think it gives us probably the best chance out of all the teams, because City arguably don't look as good. Arsenal, I'm not sold on them for some reason, and Spurs, I feel like they're that elephant in the tree meme. I think eventually they'll drop off, but yeah, they're having a little purple patch. They got lucky against us, obviously with the bad VAR calls, and yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, Spurs, I think, as you mentioned, elephant at the top of the tree. Nobody knows how it got there, but it's going to fall eventually. Like it's just, I don't think Spurs have had the easiest run of games up until now. They're going to go into a meat grinder for the rest of the season, and they will hit some very hard games. I don't even know if there's a score or goal in the game so far tonight. It's been on about 15 minutes at the moment. I think it's still 0-0. But even so, I don't see Spurs, and I don't rate Spurs all that much. I don't think Arsenal have the depth. I think City is really the only one that will be up there. Outside of that, I don't see any threat from Chelsea. I don't see any threat from Man United. I could see somebody from the likes of Newcastle or Brighton making a late push. I could see maybe Aston Villa, not Aston Villa. Who else is up there at the moment? Aston Villa is up there at the moment. I do apologise. Aston Villa are doing very well at the moment. It could be a very spicy end to the season, and I think it could just be Liverpool and Man City again running out away from everybody else. But Mihai, Paul asks a very good question here. Florentino Luis, is he a better option than Andre? He's asking me. I'll give my 2 cents, and then I'll throw the question over to yourself as well, because it's a very good question. As a DM, yes, and as a player, yes. However, Andre is going to cost a third of the price. So if you're going to go for somebody that's not homegrown, why spend 60 million when you can spend 20 million? That's my opinion. But I'll throw the question to yourself as well. Do you think Florentino Luis is a better option than Andre, with all context included, player and price?
Yes. You give me the easy one. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one I would take. I guess if you think about Florentino Luis, he does have a heftier price tag, but then again, he's played Champions League football. He's played in Europe. You can justify the price tag. I don't know. I can't give you an answer, honestly. I think I've talked about it a lot in the summer. Florentino Luis was one of my favorite players to bring up for the DM position. So yeah, obviously I would like us to sign him, but it's, yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. I wanted to make this point when we were talking about Guéhi as well. I do think that just because I said I enjoy the season a lot, and I think we're doing great, and I like to see us doing great after the last season. But I think we have to not ignore the fact that we still need to bring in a DM and a center back, in my opinion, if next season we get back into the Champions League, which we will. We now have to play. If we want to go for the lot, as Soboslai said, we need just 2 more pieces of the puzzle, I believe.
Yeah.
So I think I got of course a bit, but I would definitely take a DM and a center back. Which one? I'll just let you know. I said it. We have a great.
Who's your dream one? So, and we'll go with that, and we'll work our way back.
Florentino Luis, yeah.
And center back.
I know which is your
Go
dream
on,
center
say
back.
it.
Which one's your dream center back? But yeah, if honestly, if I were to pick one between Guehi and Inacio, I would also take Inacio. But then again, the homegrown spot.
Yeah. It's see that's the crux of it, and hilariously Brexit has fucked us a little bit in that. And this is coming from an Irishman, that Brexit has kind of fucked you a little bit with that, because it especially in the scouting of younger players and younger talent, that you need to focus more so on the homegrown stuff, which again I don't think is a bad thing, because it focuses on young English talent, which is a good thing, which means any of them that fall through the cracks and don't make the English squad get to come and play for Ireland. So I don't care, because every single one of them has Irish roots in some way, shape or form. So I have no complaints about that. But no, I think to your point, Mihai, I think a centre back and a CDM in January probably gives us the best chances of winning the league, purely because it gives us depth in a place where we have 2 injury-prone players in Matip and Kanate, and 2 aging players in Van Dijk and Matip. And somebody that can run hot and cold in Gomez. It allows us an extra person there to go and grow up alongside Kwanzaa, which would be fantastic. I think Inacio, and I've raved about him all summer long, I think he would be the Virgil van Dijk replacement. And if we were to get Florentino Luis as well, and as Paul mentions here, he's not even in the Portugal squad at the moment. I think there's a bit of a disconnect with Benfica at the moment. I don't know. I have no sources that tell me this. It's more so just I feel it. He just isn't playing for them at the moment, and he's just not. I think he'd do fantastically as our main CDM. Push McAllister then further up the field and see how well he just comes into his own the second he's in a more of a commanding position moving forward. But that's a topic for January, hopefully, and hopefully we get some news about that come January. Before we move on to
something.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Mihai.
About Benfica, I think another thing to mention here is that I think it's the first time, if I read that correctly, it's the first time in the history of the Champions League where a team that's been in pot 1 has not won a point or even scored a goal in their first 3 matches this season in the Champions League. So I feel like there is something going at Benfica, because they were so good for the past few seasons. So there's definitely something there.
Similarly to Ajax, maybe as well, purely from how Ajax have very much imploded their whole model as it is at the moment, and the fans, they lost their first 3 games, and the fans lost their fucking minds and tore the stadium down. Like, Jesus Christ. Even we don't even see Everton fans doing that, like, and I suppose maybe they're used to the misery, but that's Everton fans. Before we move on to our next topic, I just want to make sure we get the last one out, last bit of housekeeping before we finish up tonight, is to make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Help us hit that 10k mark. We're nearly there. We've about 200 to 250 more subscriptions to go before we hit our 10k mark. If you have done that already, leave a like on the video. If you have done that already, make sure you have the bell notification on so that we can let you know about all of our future streams and videos. We will have 2 videos coming out over the weekend, 3 things that we need to change for the Nottingham Forest game that's been done by Maddie, and then our other host Lou has done a predicted 11 for the Nottingham Forest game that should be out as well. So with those 2 videos in mind, and then we'll also have our stream tomorrow, and then we'll have a post-game stream with myself on Sunday at just about 4 o'clock after the game, and then we'll have our Sunday night stream as well at 7:30 too. So plenty of content for you guys, so make sure you like and subscribe and have that notification button hit on. To our last topic, Victor Osimhen. Speaking of ownership and speaking of the disconnect between players and coaches, the issue with Victor Osimhen seems to be between himself and the owner, and it doesn't so much point to a January exit, but more of a summer next year exit, which kind of leads into a little bit of our timeline of possibly Mo Salah unfortunately leaving and us getting a fat injection of 150 million worth of cash. Anthony, you're shaking your head, man. You don't want him, no?
No. Like we've already touched on, we've got 3 strikers. What do we need a 4 for? And he
Exactly.
could be he could be as good as he wants it to be, but we've got enough depth in that position. And Salah, my heart's going to break if he leaves. He can't leave.
I do, yeah.
Extend his contract, give him 5-6 years, anything, because you just can't let him go. He's 31, and he's got, what's he got now? 12
He's
goals.
got 19. He's got 19 goals and assists in all competitions so far this season.
19 already, like it's crazy, man. And surely that's not right. 19,
yeah, 19 in all competitions.
I don't know, man.
I know somebody quote me on that, somebody, because I'm nearly sure it is the situation. I'm going to look up on Transfer Market now.
Well, it's crazy, man. But you can't let a player go of that quality, even if it's for 150 mil, because you can't replace him. I think, like another, like Carter said, Neto would be like probably my second choice. I prefer Leo just because I like Leo, but you just can't replace Salah, and especially not with Osimhen, because Osimhen, we've got enough strikers, and he's like a proper striker. He's not someone who could play left wing or right wing. You got to play him up top, and then what do you do with Nunez? So it'll be a pointless signing. As good as he is as a player, it'll be a pointless signing.
Yeah. Salah in the Europa League has 2 goals, 0 assists. In the Premier League has 7 goals and 4 assists. So as it stands at the moment, he has 13. So I wasn't too far off. 13 goals and assists so far this season. I thought it was 19, but I guess not. But still, 10 games into a Premier League season, and he already has 13 goal contributions, on pace again for 20 goals and 20 assists at the age of 31. The man is an enigma. I don't think we should be trying to get rid of him anytime soon. Not even trying to get rid of him, but letting him go anytime soon. Carter, Victor Osimhen, you could move Nunez out to the right. He likes playing from the right and moving in. We also have Ben Doak out there as well, which I think Nunez will be starting ahead of. Do you see, if it was to happen, I'll give you the hypothetical. If Salah was to leave and Victor Osimhen was to come in, where does he fit in? Does he fit in ahead of Gakpo? Does he play out on the right? Does Nunez get pushed out to the right? Where do you see it in your head if Osimhen was to come and Salah was to leave?
Well, I think if we did do that, I think we would probably move. It wouldn't be like that all the time because obviously the teams aren't as good. But when we played City and we sort of did the 4-4-2 with Salah playing off Nunez, I think if you played Osimhen, because Nunez played off, I think, Stefovic at Benfica in the year he did really well. And I think you might not win the league sort of playing that way with 2 strikers. I think Diaz also would be very suited to 4-4-2 as a left midfielder. So Bostelai could play right midfield as he kind of has played on the right for Hungary and for Leipzig. And it would also then allow you to maybe have 2 sort of deeper midfielders rather than relying on 1 DM. And I think if you went into the Champions League and we played Real Madrid and just said we're just going to sit back, Nunez, Osimhen up front, Diaz on the wing, I think we would. I think if you want to go and win tournaments, we might not win the league. It's almost Mourinho-esque. We might not go and win the league. We might not get 95 points. We might get 85. But I think in terms of being hard to beat, I think we'd go and we'd probably take 6 points off City if we had Osimhen and Nunez up front. We might not win the league, but I think we'll be very hard to beat, if that makes sense. We might not win every game, but I don't think we'll lose many games at all.
Yeah, I think it'll be somewhat similar. It's purely just... See, I don't think he fits in, and again, I'd rather not lose Salah. And Hellier makes a comment here. Jim Hughes mentions to extend him. Just extend him. Doesn't matter. Give him a blank check. Mihai, to Hellier's question here, if Salah was to renew, how much would you give him, considering he's currently on, 250, 300 a week at the moment?
350.
350 a week. Thank you, Anthony.
I don't know. We were discussing it in the summer as well, that maybe I don't know, in 1 or 2 seasons, he maybe is not as consistent as he now is. But again, as Anthony said, where does he stop? Like, I don't know how much he could keep going. Like, the man, he's an enigma indeed. Like you said it, Stephen. I do feel like that he's so disciplined, and also with him being Muslim, he doesn't drink any alcohol. It helps in his recovery as well. He's obviously, sports wise, he's just like built perfectly. So I don't know. I honestly wouldn't want to see him go either, but it depends on how much we think
Well,
about.
I'll give you the hypothetical. Do you think he'd accept an incentive-laden contract where that while he's on a lower weekly wage, the more he performs and the more goals and everything he gets, like it go on a team-friendly wage, similarly to how they do it over in the States with the cap, with the salary cap and everything. They'll give a player who is older in age a more incentivized contract, meaning you hit these many targets in performance, you'll get a fat paycheck. But if you don't, well, then we're not on the hook for a major amount of money for you. Do you think he'd be willing to extend his contract with that? I know, Carter, you were shaking your head. I don't think you agree with me on that. But Mihai, do you think he'd actually extend with that sort of a contract being offered to him, considering he's practically won everything he can with us? Maybe he just does it for the team and shows even more how selfless he is than he already has.
I think he does love the club a lot, obviously, but then again, that the way we do, like, business wise, again, sure, it sounds good, but again, I just feel like it's slightly disrespectful to a player like Mo Salah. So
Yeah,
I just wouldn't do that. Yeah,
fair enough. I think maybe he might agree to it. Carter, you were shaking your head in when I was mentioning that with the incentivized contract that was laden with like performance goals and whatnot. How much would you, so seeing as he's on 350 a week at the moment, somebody, Jamie has mentioned an ownership stake. I don't think FSG would even consider that. But with his contract coming up to its end and him being on only a year left coming into next summer, how would you extend it? Would you just give him the same amount again and let him and give him a year or two extension onto it and see how he goes, or do you think the club needs to save themselves some money here and try and get some players in with some savings and maybe not be as loyal as we have been with the likes of a Henderson and giving him a deal when we should have let them go?
I think the issue is, you could probably argue, apart from, unless we're going back into, I don't want to say black and white TV, but unless we're going back to like Kenny Dalglish, you could probably argue Salah is our greatest player in terms of winning and longevity and everything. So I think that makes us look really bad. Like, in sort of, when we go to talk with players and stuff, you go, they can't even give Salah a proper contract after everything he's done. And also probably for the rest of the squad, Van Dijk, Trent, everyone goes, well, that's not the type of, I don't say work environment, but work environment or club that you want to be in. But also at the same time, I think you have to look at probably the second best player in the world ever, who played for the best team. I don't want to say the best team in the world, but Real Madrid. And they knew, I think, similar age to what Salah will be in this summer. They go, so let him go for more than they bought him for, profit. And at the time, people were a bit like, oh, and for the first year, maybe at Juventus, people were like, oh, maybe Madrid have made a mistake. But in the end, looking at it now, how he's gone at Man United and how sort of Juventus really, if you look at, I think I saw the team they put out the other day, it was just terrible. Like, they've really nosedived. And I think sometimes you have to let players move on. Like, Arsenal kept Ozil for too long. Chelsea made the right decision with Hazard. You look at Hazard. Hazard was arguably, you could argue, the best player in the league, and they let him go, £100 million, and he played maybe 20 games.
Yeah.
So I think we have to make a decision. Either we do give him a big deal, or we get deals lined up. We get one or two players, but also I would want probably, if we're talking Saudi Arabia, I think there was a thing, although they're all owned by, I don't want to maybe say for legal reasons or something, but they're all owned by sort of the same people. Like, they're run by different people. So Al Hilal might want him, Al Ittihad might want him. Like, there could be a sort of rivalry between the clubs, which could, I think, would at least maybe get us 200 million, because they'll all want him at the clubs. So, and that does go a long way. Like, if you look at how much Gravenberch was, or how much we spent on even Szoboszlai, if you could get 3 players of Szoboszlai's caliber for the money of Salah, I think that would overall improve the team. We're going to miss Salah, but you just have to hope that other people, like how Spurs have with Harry Kane, Spurs have had their best ever start and they've sold their best ever player. Like sometimes you let people move on and other people, Nunez goes, well, I can't mess around anymore. I have to score the goal, and so on for everyone else.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's Anthony. I'm in very much agreement with yourself as well. I'm going to absolutely cry my eyes out, very much like for when Firmino left. I hope that day never comes, and I hope he retires a Liverpool player. But I also think that we need to be a little bit ruthless and go with some business decisions, and we need to make a decision come next summer on if, and the decision might be taken out of our hands completely, and Salah may come and be like, look, I've done everything here. I've now won the Europa League as well. Fingers crossed it happens. I've now won the Europa League as well, and I've helped you guys get back into Champions League again. I'm now the top 10 Premier League scorers of all time. I want to go and get some generational wealth for my family and have my family never have to worry about any money ever again and go to Saudi Arabia and make silly bags of money. And I think he's deserved it, in my own opinion. I think he'd make absolutely ludicrous money over there. But there's a part of you that wants to be selfish and be like, no, keep him. Fuck it, keep him. Even if he goes to shite, keep him. He's worth it. Because he could be on the case of 9 games out of 10. He'd be making you pull your hair out, but then on that 10th game, he's just unbeatable. Similarly to how Nunez is right now, funnily enough. 9 times out of 10, he'll make you pull your hair out. Scores a cracker of a goal, then puts a centre back down and goes around the keeper and then smacks it off the post in front of an open goal. That's why I absolutely love Nunez. But we've come up to our hour mark now. I want to thank everybody for joining us on this evening's stream. I want to thank Anthony, Carter, Mihai, and everybody in the group everybody in the chat for joining us. If you haven't already, just as a last note before we finish off, please make sure to like and subscribe. Help us hit that 10K mark. Make sure you have the bell notification on for our 2 videos that are coming out this weekend, for our 3 things that we'll change going into Nottingham Forest and our predicted 11 for Nottingham Forest. And also our stream tomorrow at 7:30. We have a post-game stream at about the 4 o'clock mark with myself, and the 7:30 stream UK time on Sunday also. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. And I hope anybody in Ireland that is watching has a lovely bank holiday weekend, because I have a lovely 4-day weekend coming up. It's going to be beautiful. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you again tomorrow evening for our pre-match preview.